And we're live. Hey everyone, welcome to this live stream. I'm going to be answering your questions related to software. I know that, every once in a while you hit a wall in your learning process, and hopefully these Q&As help clarify things. So I specialize in like Django and Python and JavaScript and React and things around that as well, like machine learning and deep learning, things like that I'm super interested in as well. But I'm here to answer your questions. So I really enjoy doing these live chats because it gives me a better way to connect with you and understand some of the challenges that you're going through, because that actually helps me a lot to tailor content, but also in my own edification. Like, I'm still learning. I think we all should be still learning and getting better, right? That, to me, is the goal of learning how to leverage technology altogether. So yeah, if you have questions, please let me know. I would love to hear them from you. The fastest way to get most of your questions answered is to use a super chat, because after this starts, maybe like 10 or 15 minutes in, I get super far behind. So doing those super chats not only helps me do these live events, but also gets your question answered a lot faster. Hello for everyone else. I do try to answer these questions as quickly as possible too. So we'll see what we've got. Let me know also where you're from. Say hi. What's your name? Where are you from? Are you a subscriber yet? Why not? If you're not, I want to hit 1 million subscribers. There's no real reason for it. I don't really particularly care to have 1 million. It's just a number. I really actually just want to help the people who I can. And that's what it comes down to. 1 million just sounds like a really cool number. That's it. It has nothing to do with anything else. But anyways, so like that's not why I do it, is the point, right? I do it so I can help you break through the challenges that you're having while you're building software or anything else, really. You can ask me whatever you want. But for me, when I was learning how to build software, I got some really good advice, and that advice has carried me years and years and years. So I want to be that way for anyone around the world. That's really why I do these things. It's why I teach in the first place. So yeah, anyways, let's go ahead and jump into it. So I got a few questions already. And so, hey, Watson, how's it going? Welcome back. You come on a good amount, I think. Pretty sure you do. So thank you. And you're from the Dominican Republic. Great. I've never been. Maybe someday. Probably not this year. This is one of those years, I guess, huh? Or something most of us alive have never really experienced, I guess, huh? Anyways, hello, Jules. How's it going? Ice cream. Hello. Hi. Let's see here. Where am I right now? Like, where in the world? I'm in my studio in California, in Southern California specifically. Thank you for the question. Hello. Please talk to Code with Harry for a collab. I don't know who that is. I haven't seen any of Code with Harry's content. So maybe at some point we can. Does Harry know about me, and has he considered doing this? And I should say, my name is Justin. I don't actually introduce myself very often, so this is in a way coding with Justin. Yeah. I realize there's a lot of teachers out there that teach online, especially code teachers, that don't always introduce themselves, right? They don't always say their names. But then there's other people that do it really well, or their actual YouTube channel is their name, in which mine is not, as you can tell. So is your Django bootcamp enough to become a Django backend developer? So I've been doing this Django bootcamp. It's been live. It's tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, so that's California time. There's only 2 days left in it. But the bootcamp itself, hopefully, well, you probably won't be a professional developer yet. I don't think that you would be. I had some ambitions to doing one of those boot camps where it's like, oh, you'll definitely get a job after this. But honestly, that's like a lot of work that needs to go into it. And it might be weeks and weeks of work. My goal actually with the Django bootcamp was to just really insert you into using Django at a pretty good level right off the bat. So I would say that you are a Django developer in the sense that you can actually build things from it with going through that bootcamp. I think you actually learn a lot in there. The prerequisites, I would say actually knowing some Python. So I think up to 30 days of, or I have a series called 30 Days of Python up to day 15. I think that would actually cover it for you. And it is on my YouTube channel, so check that out if you're interested. Hey, Mohammed, welcome. What do I do on this channel? So I'm guessing this video was recommended to you and you just jumped on. So I actually teach people how to code by building real projects. I do a number of other things in there, but it's really just project-based coding to help you launch your project and also getting like really good at building software. At least that's the goal. So that's what I do. Thanks for the question and thanks for coming out. After basic Python, I learned GUI next. Where should I start, Django or MySQL? So if you already know Python, switching over to SQL is going to be a little unnatural for you probably. So I would say Django is a really good next step to build web applications with Python. That would be my recommendation. And with that, with Django, you can start to actually learn MySQL or SQL altogether because Django uses SQL. But it sort of abstracts it away so you don't actually have to do a whole lot of SQL yourself. Thanks for the question. And hi, you're from India. Nice to meet you. Kashyap, is that how, or Om Kashyap, is that how I pronounce your name? Thank you for saying hi. The podcast was nice. The one with Just Django, is that the one you're referring to? If so, thank you for watching. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Let's see here. As a Python developer, is it required to have Python certified? Do you need a certification to be a developer? Well, no, of course not. You don't actually need a certification to be a developer. You just need to actually be able to develop. Now, there are some jobs that that have that as a prerequisite, that you need certain kinds of certification. But Elon Musk with SpaceX recently said, I don't care what your background is. If you know the stuff, we'll probably hire you. So that's probably true for a lot of jobs. I mean, there are also a lot of jobs that are like, no, you have to have a CS degree, you have to have a master's, and then you also have to get all these other cloud certifications that go with it. I'm not aware of a full-on Python certification from a reputable source. I'm sure there's a lot of them out there that give certifications, but you know, if I handed over certifications, I would actually have no real way of measuring whether or not they have that certification, if it's valid or not, because I don't have the systems in place to do it. I think it's Udacity that has a number of certifications that have been well received. So maybe that would be a good place to do it. But I know Udacity is a little bit more on the expensive side. It's more like closer to what a university would cost. So thanks for the question. That was a good one. Haven't had that question in a long time. Here we go. So does Spotify use Django? Would love to get insight on that, if you will. I actually don't know if Spotify uses Django. I don't think it does. I haven't heard that. I feel like I would have heard that. I would have heard that Django is being used in Spotify or with Spotify or however you say that. But like Instagram uses it, Pinterest uses it, NASA has used it, I believe. There's a number of really big services that have used it, but I just don't know if Spotify is one of them. That would be a really cool thing to find out. So if one of you does know that, please let me know in the comments because it'd be great. Good morning. Welcome, Arthur. 5 a.m. So where are you? Where in the world are you, Arthur? In Europe, maybe? You want to learn artificial intelligence? Please help me out. So there's a couple of ways on how you can think about approaching this. One is brushing up on your math skills. That's calculus and linear algebra. Not too advanced of calculus and not too advanced of linear algebra because, well, I mean, you could do advanced things, but you don't necessarily need super advanced math to do well with a lot of current state-of-the-art artificial intelligence, which is deep learning. But as far as maybe not going the math route first, there's a really great series called Fast AI, so fast.ai. The newest one just came out, and there's also a book, Deep Learning for Coders, from Fast AI with Jeremy Howard. That one's really, really good. I really enjoy that one. I also really like this book from Andrew Trask. This one is a little bit more doing things from scratch, where this one's more hands-on, not so much talking about the math and how to figure out all of the math-related things. So I do recommend both of those books as a place to start. And I think they both have repos on GitHub that will allow you to learn from what they do pretty much for free. So hopefully that answers your question. Next one, these live Q&As are really awesome. Thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoy them. I enjoy them as well. I think they're a lot of fun. I get to answer a lot of really interesting questions, sometimes not so interesting questions, but you know, that's part of the nature of the world and also of learning. You know, just because I don't find it interesting, maybe you do, and you ask that question and I help make it more interesting. I don't know. We'll see. What libraries do I use the most personally? Obviously, I'm assuming you mean Python libraries. If you mean JavaScript packages, then you could tell me that, or modules, and you know, there's a lot of different ways to describe what these third-party extensions are. So I probably use Python requests the most. Honestly, the next one is probably like Pandas, Jupyter, and well, certainly Django's way up there too, but not every project I do in Python requires Django, so I do use Flask and Fast API from time to time as well. But like almost every project I have, maybe not every single one, but so many of them, I'm using Python requests to do all sorts of API requests in there. So that's probably by far the one I use the most. And it's also one of the most simple ones to use, which is also pretty cool. And then I would say Python Pandas is really cool. So Pandas is another way to think about it. This one I use the most when I'm going into doing more data science related things. Django is the one I probably use the most for web application development. And I'm trying to think of other ones. That's all I've got off the top of my head. I'm sure there's a number of things that I could probably research and write down. What would be really cool is for you, this is a challenge for you, to use Python requests to go through all of my requirementstxt as well as all my pip files on my GitHub, which if you go to cfe.sh/github, it will take you to my GitHub page, and you can actually tell me what I use most personally in all of those projects. That might be an interesting challenge for you if you're up for it. Is JavaScript required for React? Well, you can use TypeScript as well. TypeScript and JavaScript are incredibly similar. TypeScript is, well, it's typed, so it's more, you have to declare things more specifically as to what like values mean. That's maybe the best way to phrase it, but honestly, you should probably know JavaScript to learn TypeScript beforehand anyway. So yeah, I would say JavaScript is absolutely required for React.js and React Native to understand how JavaScript works. So even some basic stuff, I mean, I guess you don't have to get too advanced in the JavaScript area, but I would say that knowing some JavaScript is a really, really good idea. You know what I mean? Can I explain Django Cache, when and how to implement it? There's actually a number of good packages for this, for caching. All it's doing is it's attempting to remove overhead when it comes to getting resources, right? So that's essentially what's happening. So if you cache a query, for example, when it's requested in the future, the server or the backend, the database itself doesn't necessarily need to be hit again. It could just use what's already cached, what's already kind of stored, that's ready to go, especially if it's something that's used often. So just literally Google Django Cache and you'll find a number of ways on how to implement it. So yeah, thanks for the question. I'm trying to add a real-time chat app in my production using a Django REST framework as a backend. What's the best method for it? So, you know, oftentimes I wonder if real-time chat is needed in the vast majority of projects. So if you're convinced real-time chat is needed in your project, then Django Channels 2, that's the name of the package, Channels 2, is probably your best option. The Django REST framework doesn't really need to be used inside of channels 2, although it can be to serialize and validate the data that's coming through. But you wouldn't really be using the inputs. You'd be using the serializer, or rather, you wouldn't be using the views that you can use in Django REST framework. You would really just be using the serializers to serialize and validate incoming data, because you'd be using WebSockets instead of HTTP. So that's just a slightly different method on how to do things. And yes, I have a tutorial on that on my channel already. It's from, I don't know, a year or two ago, but it is still very relevant to today. There might be a few minor changes here and there, but overall, it's the same. Thanks for the question. I don't know why your subs are still low, even though your content is so great. You know, I actually don't think my subs are that low. You know what I mean? Like, and there's probably something that I'm not doing right that could probably, you know, reach more people. But that's not my goal. I mentioned that at the very beginning of this. It's not really my goal to just reach a ton of people. My goal is to help as many people as I can. And really with the struggles that I've had myself, to help other people overcome those things a little bit faster, while also providing, you know, me being one of the ones to go first for them, to show them sort of a path that they can follow to also be successful with software development, or as successful as they want. So I don't know, this subs itself, like I think I had like something like 60,000 in the last year. So that's something. That's not nothing, right? But I appreciate the sentiment. I really do. So yeah, I mean, I guess part of it is like, hey, do you guys enjoy these things? Just subscribe. I feel that way about a lot of YouTube creators, right? So if you really enjoy some of that content and you're getting recommended a lot and you watch it a lot, just hit that subscribe, you know, mine or not, but it really does help those creators, because it's like it pushes them a little bit further. Every new sub is just a little bit further and a little bit further, I think, because it's like a high five, you know, like it feels good, like a high five after shooting the winning point in a game or something, you know. Anyways, Hassan, thank you. I'm glad I could help answer your question. Hey Justin, question for you. Any ideas of branching out into other backend languages such as Golang? Thanks for the question, Robert. Maybe at some point, something like Golang. If anything, the backend I would end up moving towards, other than Python, because I've been covering so much in Python, is more JavaScript backend. So something that's driven through Node.js, like Express.js or one of the other JavaScript backends. So that's probably what I'd be doing more likely soon. Now Golang and Julia and some of these other languages are really interesting to me. I probably need to give them more time, but there's still so much that I can do with what I've got now. And there still is so much that I want to do, that sticking just with web development is certainly not something that I want to do. I want to do a lot more machine learning and AI stuff. Anyways, thanks for the question. I want to learn Django. Is it possible with 4 GB of RAM? Yes, it absolutely is. Just like I have a Raspberry Pi. I don't know where it is, but I have an old Raspberry Pi 3. I think it only had 1 GB of RAM, and I was able to run Django successfully on there. No problems. I think the problems come up when you start to run too many things on there. And then also your text editor, just be careful as to what you're picking that isn't taking too much RAM either. Thanks for the question. So I just answered this one, how to create a Django chat application. I definitely have the real-time chat one on my channel already. A more robust one, it's called Direct Messages in Django. It's on my website, so cfe.sh, you know, up here. Thank you. What is my take on Django versus Flask while building using React.js? Okay, so the React.js conversation doesn't actually matter that much to what the backend is. I mean, it can, I guess, in some sense, but Django's all batteries are in there, right? So pretty much everything that you might need in a web application is in Django. Now that overhead is one of the things that you are sacrificing by using Django, because you need to learn a lot more to actually have Django work, where Flask is basically just a Python function and you can just have it run without anything extra. So if you need all the extra bits, then Django's a really good way to do that. But both of them are really good and do well in the purposes that they can do, right? So they can quite literally do the exact same thing if you build enough or strip down enough for either one. So they're both web application development frameworks, right? They just handle it differently. I actually don't know if there's very many full-featured web application frameworks that are like Django out there in other languages as well. I'm not sure if there is. I've yet to see something that is full features that. Maybe something in like PHP, but I'm not a huge fan of PHP, so I don't use it at all. So maybe that's why I don't know of that one. But anyways, thank you. Hey, Mod, or Ahmed from India. I do not know how to pronounce the city. You want to ask what kind of projects one should do as a beginner for getting a better understanding of Django. What are you interested in, right? So to me, that's how I learned. I picked a project that I really wanted to exist, and I tried to build that. And I used as many sources as I could to make that happen. So I have a project, a very simple project called MVP Landing on my YouTube channel that is meant to, hey, I've got this idea for a project. I need to go out and promote it. That's kind of the idea, and all of it's built into Django. So that might be a good place to start, or one of my Try Django series. But really, again, just pick a project that you really, really want to learn from or learn about and build, and you want it in the world. That will help you go forward every single time, right? Whatever the project is, even if it's with Django or not, that's always been what's carried me forward. Something that I really wanted in the world. I went and tried my best to make it. What's my main source of income? That's an incredibly personal question there, buddy. Just kidding. I teach. That's my personal income. I teach on YouTube, and I also teach on codingforentrepreneurs.com or cfe.sh, same website. And then also I have a few courses on Udemy and stuff like that too, and Skillshare. Don't remember if I don't think I have a LinkedIn course at this point. Maybe at some point I will. But yeah, I teach all the time. So on YouTube, on my website, on those courses, like that's how I make an income. I've definitely done consulting gigs here and there. Not so much freelancing, like actually doing the code as much as consulting. But that's more of a rare thing. I really like building projects that I'm interested in and then teaching about them, or just continuing building on them. So I have other little projects here and there that I have for other sources of income, but you said main source, so teaching. Thanks for the question. Let's see. You're welcome for answering your question. Thank you for asking it. If you're even still here, that was forever ago. Yes. Do you recommend a backend roadmap with Django? Like how to actually make this happen, right? How to actually solve like learning Django. I'm assuming that's what you mean. Because if you mean to actually build projects, every project's different. To say that there's a roadmap for every project, I think is a drastic oversimplification of the challenges that come with every project. So as far as learning Django itself, you really want to get good at using models and views and probably Django forms. At least those things. Django templates are also interesting if you are using Django for actually the front end side of Django. Not a lot of people do. Some people use it for the REST API side, so then the Django REST framework would be the other part. But really, if you just mastered how to use models and views and actually render out that data, and then forms to change and manipulate it, I think you'd be in pretty good shape as far as what your skills with Django are. Hopefully that answers your question. But those are the fundamental things. I mean, if you go to djangoproject.com, it probably says the same thing. Like their basic tutorial does essentially what I just said. So yeah. Advanced Django projects for a portfolio. Yes, doing a real-time web application with WebSockets, absolutely on the more advanced side of things. Scheduling and managing tasks through Django and Celery, that's more advanced. It's not that hard to do, but to do it well is kind of hard. Maybe building a full-on e-commerce application, building some sort of social network, maybe even using Django to work with a microservice that has a machine learning framework in it, or some sort of machine learning model that Django is communicating with that microservice. Django itself is not serving the machine learning model, but is a big part of the pipeline for the machine learning model. I think that would be a really good advanced Django project as well, if you could do that. I'm trying to think of something else that might be good. Nothing comes up off the top of my head. Any suggestions for a beginner's project? I'm not sure if this is exactly the same question as you asked, or somebody asked before. It might be, but pick one that you are really interested in, or build an e-commerce application. I don't know. Like that's my recommendation for you there. Cool. You're from Poland, but you live in the UK. You watch my bootcamp every day. Thank you so much. At what? That's 6 p.m. So we don't use the 24-hour clock in the US. I thought the UK didn't either. Maybe I'm just remembering incorrectly, because I was in London for a few weeks, but I don't remember the 24-hour clock being a thing there. Anyways, cool. I'm glad you're trying to get a job. It's great that you are practicing. Just keep it up and try a bunch of different projects. And I would say when you find something you're really interested in, spend as much time as you possibly can learning that thing, and then write literally how-to guides, even if it's for yourself, but how-to guides to redo what you tried to do, right? So if you solve a really challenging problem, make a how-to guide, put it somewhere that it's not going to be lost. So even like medium.com. The really cool thing about that is then you can come back to it later when you need to solve problems. I can't tell you how many times I've solved a problem in a project and I made a how-to guide, and then I faced that exact same problem again. I do a Google search, and literally my website comes up for that. And I completely forgot I wrote that article, but then I go back on it and it's like, oh, cool. Like now I remember exactly that thing. So I do recommend that you do that, Arthur or Arthur. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. I do that all the time, as I'm sure you're well aware at this point. I'm really grateful for my contribution. Thank you so much. I'm glad I was able to help and I was able to contribute. And really the only reason I can do these things is two things, actually. You guys watching, asking questions, showing up, like that allows me to do this, right? Of course, enrolling and supporting things, that definitely helps as well. But the other reason, the main reason, is because of the Django developers, all of that core team. We are all so lucky that they've open sourced it and really pushed the bounds of what's possible. People like me who develop and teach on it just really benefit from everything that they've done. So I think the big props actually should go to them. But thank you. Same here. Cool. Not quite sure what you were referring to there. What is the best way to import Excel data into a Django database? How much data? So if it's a lot of data, I would use probably Python pandas to get the data, clean the data, and then you can import Django data by using something called bulk create. Bulk create will allow you to take a bunch of data that's in a list that actually is a not saved instance of a class or an instantiated class for any given model, and then use bulk create to actually create it. I think that would probably be the best way to go about doing this. So thanks for the question. So how big of a team do I have? So for the vast majority of things, it's just me. I've hired freelancers before. I've hired personal assistants before to do all sorts of things, right? So every once in a while, I will hire somebody to help me out with little things that I need done on the website or handling whatever. So the team size, I guess, fluctuates, but it's always pretty much just me. So how small of a team can you get away with for a website the size of CFE? I'll speak on what I've heard for other websites that maybe are a little bit more successful. So if you are a developer like me, you can manage freelancers really, really fast and really easily. because you know exactly what needs to be done, and there's really quick and easy ways to test those things. So other developers that are like me, that all they do is develop, they don't necessarily teach, they can absolutely run it all on their own, just by themselves, and make it incredibly successful. So one that comes to mind is Derek Sivers with CD Baby. If you don't know who he is, it's definitely someone you should read about. He's awesome. He's a really interesting guy. Anyways, he taught himself how to program, and he ran CD Baby's website, I think all of it, for like a decade or more, and they ended up selling it for like $50 or $60 million of a business, and he made all of that money, and that was like all his. And he ran the entire website himself. So I think that's what software does, is it allows us to leverage all of the talents that you have through using code, and just expand your natural abilities. So that's one of the things that I'm really excited about software, is I can leverage those things. So if you also think about all of the other services that I use to actually run codingforentrepreneurs.com or any of those other things, then we're talking about a much bigger team that I don't actually have to manage or do anything. I just pay a small portion to do that. So yeah, thanks for the question. Cool. Here we go. So, continue with the AI talk. Do you recommend enrolling in these 6 months AI certificates from top universities? They are around $2,500 US. Yeah, that's a good question. So it depends on what your actual budget is for education, right? So one of the nice things about one of these certificates from top universities is there's this like sort of social pressure, at least a little bit of social pressure, to do better than trying to pick up books on your own and just doing it on your own, right? So this is true for any course that's any dollar amount, right? There's actually a little bit of pressure, but there's more and more pressure for you to get your money's worth out of whatever that investment is. So I don't actually know of the certificates that you're referring to, or of the universities that are doing it. So one of the things I hesitate with some universities is the speed as to which they're trying to pump out this content to then sell a certificate, right? Which may mean that it's not as good of content. Because if you look at, I think, Stanford, Harvard, I think even the University of Michigan, there's a number of them that release free AI stuff. MIT definitely, that release free AI courses that you can learn all of the things that you would need to learn from. And then I would imagine there's probably practice exams that you can look at for these AI certificates somewhere out there, and see if after you've learned all these free things on YouTube, or pick up a course here and there that's way less than $2,500, you could probably figure out exactly what they're going to be testing on at these top universities. But the biggest thing is that every university or every course, especially in AI, not so much in web development or in other sorts of Python areas, AI is changing a lot all of the time, right? So if you take a course for 6 months, literally in 6 months, the state of the art may have changed, and a lot of the approaches to doing the state of the art thing has changed as well. So that's where the fundamentals come in. That's where actually doing the fundamentals, and this is why I recommend this book so much. Andrew Trask does those fundamentals that aren't probably going to change a whole lot over the next decade. I mean, maybe they will, because there's something I just don't know about that is coming. But this just uses NumPy to teach you how to do deep learning. And there are certainly other books that are great for that. But I would say just buy that book. It's like $30, $40, something like that. And you're going to learn a lot from that. So go through that whole book and then hit me up later. Okay, Jorge? Does that sound good? Thanks for the question. It's a really good requirements.txt idea. Yeah, I mean, I actually think that would be really interesting to do it on a lot of the popular Python packages, to see what the actual popular ones are. Of course, not every project remembers to put requirements.txt. I think when I was earlier on, I don't always remember if I actually submitted that to my Git repo. So maybe some of my older ones don't have it. But certainly an interesting approach, I would say. All right. So, probably going to be on for maybe another 10 minutes. I literally say this every time. I'm sure if you've been on a few of my live Q&As at this point, I'm like, okay, 10 minutes left. And then several people come on with their super chats. And then, I get a few other good questions. And it's like, oh, then I'm on for another half an hour. So let's see if that happens here. Do any of you guys watch The Boys? I'm gonna jump into the actual live stream itself. Like The Boys, the TV show, and if you do you enjoy it? I think it's like really, really funny, and how season 2 ended was hilarious. Really disgusting, like the whole show, but it's really, really funny. So yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about it. Yeah, so you're in early season 2. It's fun. Yeah. I mean, the way season 2 ends, season 2 had like a little bit of a slow start, but the last few episodes I think are really good. So you should keep going and finish it off. Suhanth, is that how I pronounce your name? Ramesh. I would really love to have a way to, if there's like a pronunciation for names all around the world, because there's unique names everywhere. I would love to actually learn how to pronounce more names, because I actually do want to talk to you guys and be as respectful as possible. And I think names, Sushanth, thanks, Shushanth. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Sorry if I'm not. Anyways, okay, let me go back to actually answering some questions. Sushanth, thank you. All right. So, do you think that React is overkill for most projects in terms of size and performance? I do not. React is not that big in terms of size. Check out my parcel.js video that I did a few days ago. You can get really, really small build size for React itself. But the performance is amazing. It's really, really good, especially if you're using a content delivery network for React projects. So yeah, I do like React a lot. Overkill for most projects. I mean, not every project does need it. So maybe in that case, yes. But if your project needs JavaScript, React is probably the easiest way to get JavaScript executing. I mean, maybe Vue.js, but I haven't done much of it. Vue.js in general. I'm normally not sitting. I'm sitting right now. I'm normally standing more, and also standing I get like a little bit more energy, but it's later in the day, so I'm sitting. You loved my interview in the Just Django podcast. So inspiring. Keep grinding with AI. Greetings from Brazil. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I listened to a little bit of it, and as you see on these live Q&As, I give a ton of context, maybe too much context for a simple yes or no answer. Or I think Matt asked me like, oh, how'd you get into Django? And I talked for like 20 minutes talking about everything that led up to, well, not even everything. I left out a bunch, but almost everything that led up to getting into Django. And it was really as simple as I just needed a better tool to make a project that I wanted to make. And that's how I found Django, like through trial and error and a suggestion from a friend, Django. But anyways, thanks for listening to that. I had a great time with Matt. We met through email, like, I don't know, a couple weeks prior to that, and just jumped on that podcast. And I intend to go on more podcasts in the future. I do want to collaborate more with more creators, and Matt hit me at the right time for all that. For a really long time, I kind of thought of this creator game as in like a YouTuber or making courses or anything like that. I kind of thought of it in the terms of it's like a winners takes all game, right? So it's almost like it's like a tennis or golf, and the best is going to be the one that just beats everybody else. But what I realized, it actually is like tennis or golf, but what we're actually competing against is not each other, but the audience. Like, we want to get more audience, so we want to bring these things forward and stronger and better in the future. So definitely not a zero-sum game, even though for a really long time I felt that way, which is why I actually haven't done a whole lot of collaborations. Another reason for that, also with the collaborations, is the times that I have done collaborations, sometimes I've heard later that the people I may have done something with aren't always the most honest of people, and it's kind of a bummer when that happens. And this happened recently, not with me, but with a number of people in the AI community. And it was like such a bummer to see, because like, you want to see the community progress and you want to see the content getting out there and people learning about all the cool stuff. But then when somebody takes advantage of all of that and just sort of games the YouTube algorithm, and is really just at the end of the day stealing or just being dishonest, that's a bummer. I don't want to see that. And unfortunately, that's why I'm like, oh, I'm just going to be siloed and only work on my own content, and then just that's it. But maybe at some point I'll do more outside of just my own content and actually collaborate with other people, go on podcasts, do those sorts of things more. It's just like, another part of that was, the more times I'm interviewed, or the more times I'm just not actually doing research, as in coding my own projects. If I'm not doing that, then I should be teaching. And if I'm not doing one of those two things, I'm not really going to be in and bringing value to a lot of you guys. So yeah, there is all that context. Told you, give a lot of context. Here we go. You subbed and liked. Yeah, Mohammed, thank you. You made a content management system using PHP and MySQL. Oh, so what I said about PHP probably means that you unsubbed and disliked. Is that right? Just kidding. So where do you recommend storing credentials for accessing MySQL databases? Like, do you have a private and public directory? I'm not sure about the directory part of things, but environment variables is a very common place to store that data, so you can roll it a lot faster. And then it's also locked down more often in the service. Some services have credential managers, and if you, like Google Cloud Storage, I believe, has one. I'm pretty sure AWS has one too. You might actually put it in there, but also getting in a habit of actually rolling those passwords, rolling those credentials. I think that's also an important thing to do from time to time. Good question. Good question. Okay. Raja, is your 30 days of Python complete? No, I don't know what to do for the 30th day. So this is a new version of 30 days of Python for Python 3.8, but really a new version of Python 3. It doesn't actually matter which version of 3, and probably even Python 4 will work in it. But I did an older version of 30 days of Python. I just wanted to update it because the older version's like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years old now. And the older version, the last 5 days were really just one project. So what I did instead in this one, the last 10 days, or well, right now it's sitting at 9 days, they're all individual projects. So instead of spreading them over multiple days, I just made the day really long and did the project that way. So I'm all ears for suggestions on the 30th day of 30 days of Python. So sooner or later I'll find one that works. That's not like, oh, you want to, it's meant to be literally Python, not, oh, now we're going to do Django, or now we're going to do Flask, because those things need a lot more than just like an hour or so of a lesson, right? Or like, oh, do machine learning. Again, that could be its own 30 days type of thing. Where to find projects to learn Django? You've come to the right channel. My channel has a ton of them. So try Django as a series for that. Check it out. Thanks for the question. All right. What's my point of view on Flutter? Yeah, so Flutter has become a popular way to build web application, or excuse me, build native mobile applications. I haven't used it. I know it's super hyped right now. but it's in Dart. So Dart is another language that you would have to learn to use Flutter. I think that is a huge downside because that's going to assume that Dart is here for the long haul. Now, Flutter is like the new hotness, I guess, for building mobile applications, but it really moves away from a lot of the web developers that build applications. So a lot of the web developers that know React.js really well, they're going to use React Native, which is part of the reason I really like React Native, is because it's almost identical to React, just from a mobile development standpoint. So it's really hard to say that I like Flutter over that because I really haven't used it. I mean, perhaps, I've dabbled a little bit, right? But I haven't actually built something with it. And maybe once I do, then I'll be like, oh my gosh, Flutter is amazing. But I do actually like developing with React Native. I think it's a very seamless transition for the most part from React.js to React Native. Flutter, I just has yet to be seen if it's going to be so seamless. I don't think it will. Yeah. Okay, so next question. Can I make an Android app with Phonegap and Django? Django would not be inside of the application itself, but it would be a service that your application that you build with Cordova or Phonegap that would call it. So Django would be a backend service that you do REST API calls to. It would not live on your mobile device. That's not what Django is for. So you can actually build Python binaries. You can absolutely build Python binaries that you can bring into a mobile application. I definitely into Android applications. I'm trying to remember if iOS can do it. I think iOS can do it. I just don't remember exactly how it's done. So yeah, thank you for the question. What are other great YouTubers that I recommend for you with Python and Django? So there's two guys that I know that I've talked to a number of times, and one of them is Dennis Ivey. Another one is Coding with Mitch. He does mostly Android stuff, but he does Django and Python a little bit here and there. I really like Syntax. He's done a lot of amazing content. Huge fan of his. Harrison. He's got very strong opinions about the world, and I do appreciate that about him. So those guys are great. Corey Schaefer's another one that gets recommended to me a lot, but I've only seen a little bit of Corey Schaefer's work, so I don't know that much about it. Actually, I've only seen a little bit about pretty much all those guys' work, except for Syntax. Harrison does so much great stuff that it's like, oh, that's an interesting topic. I would love to check out his take on it, such as his neural network one. There's a newer one, and it's very similar to what Andrew Trask did in that book that I saw there, or that I held up a few times now through this Q&A. So those guys. I'm sure there's people out there that I'm missing. Oh, PyPlane, he's been on the live chat a few times. He's got some cool content. Haven't watched that much of it, but it is some pretty cool content. So anyways, okay guys, so I'm going to be hopping off in just a minute, and it looks like we're not getting any super chats on this live chat, but you know what? That's okay, because hopefully I answered a bunch of questions. You know what'd be really, really cool is if at some point somebody somewhere, this would be really cool, is somebody somewhere took a lot of these questions and put them into little clips, and we make like a clip channel from these live Q&As, or even from my lessons themselves. So like if there's a part in one of my courses that's like, oh wow, that was great, this segment was really, really good, to actually clip that, send it to me, and we can start making a bunch of little clips. I've always would have loved to do that with my courses, but I don't actually go back and rewatch them. It's very rare that I will, but it would be nice to be able to share just little clips, 30 seconds or a minute or 5 minutes or whatever it is, that is interesting, So what do you guys think about that? Wouldn't that be cool? So, here we go. What is the concept of coding for entrepreneurs? Is Python or Django for entrepreneurs? Yeah, so I talked about this a lot in the podcast I did with Just Django and any other podcasts, I guess, but that's what I am, right? So like I started out as pretty much non-technical, right? I didn't really know how to code. I knew HTML and CSS a little bit, but I don't really call that programming. Some people argue with that statement, but I would say that I didn't really know how to code. And then once I learned how to code, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to make this into a class, right? But leading up to that, it was all about entrepreneurship. I wanted to own my own project and my own business that allowed me to have freedom. That's what it came down to at the end of the day. And then software and coding just allowed me to get there. I always knew that technology, I would play some sort of role in technology. I just didn't know what, and I didn't really grow up with a lot of people in software, right? Like around me growing up. Like it's not like I had a bunch of friends or family friends that their lives was software or even database management or anything like that. So maybe I would have actually done software much earlier at a much earlier age had I had those influences. But that's what I am. I'm a coding entrepreneur. At least that's how I feel about things. And so coding for entrepreneurs was meant to be, hey, you entrepreneurs that don't think you know how to code, or excuse me, let me rephrase that. You entrepreneurs that are non-technical, that don't feel confident in your ability to code, and maybe you think it's too hard or it's like super abstract. I really wanted to make it for those kinds of people. Now it's kind of grown beyond just entrepreneurs. It's really just, hey, let's build some really cool projects together. And coding for entrepreneurs does still resonate with people because there's some people that are coders that also want to be entrepreneurs. They want to build their own project that will help them solve their quest for freedom, if you will. I still have that, right? It's like, it's an ongoing thing. Like, and what I mean by freedom is literally you wake up in the morning and you get to decide whatever you want to do, like literally anything. I've been fortunate to be able to do that for the past 7 years. There's been hiccups there. It's not always perfectly like that, but for the most part, I now get to choose, hey, I chose to jump on this. My boss didn't call me and say, hey, go on your live Q&A right now, or else, you know, that's one thing against you. Yeah, so I really enjoy being an entrepreneur and doing as much entrepreneurial things as I can. So that's the gist of that concept. Thanks for the question. Let's see here. Somebody asked me if I'm back on YouTube and going to be producing a lot more. Yes, I am back on YouTube and I'm going to be producing a lot more on here. You know, what's crazy is for as little effort as I've put on YouTube, I've had a lot of great results. And when I say little effort, a lot of the things that are on YouTube were a result of a course that I put elsewhere, right? So like the Try Django series, I did that originally because I had courses off of YouTube in all different places, and I wanted everyone on those courses to have some sort of baseline in Django. So I'm just like, oh, I'll put it for free on YouTube. And oh yeah, also the setup part. I don't want people to have to watch the setup part every course. So why don't I have one location for that? So I put those on YouTube too, and it just started gaining momentum. So I just kept on doing it. And I get questions all the time, like, oh, why don't you do more stuff for YouTube and all that? Or like, why don't you upload more? Why don't you do this? Well, I do actually upload a ton. I upload it in a lot of different places. It's just not on YouTube. So what I'm trying to do is at least these live things, right? So if I have recordings or courses and I'm not around, the live thing hopefully will actually suffice in between those more like major full releases, like the Tweet Me 2 one a few months back, which that course itself took me like a while to actually build. Maybe it was like 3 or 4 weeks to actually finish that entire course, which ends up being, excuse me, about 12 hours of, almost 12 hours of consistent teaching content. Yeah. Oh, this is an interesting question. Even though it was asked 2 times, let's leave it to 1, please. Even if I don't get to you, please don't just overload the live stream. Do you deploy Django and React in the same server? Yeah, so kind of. Not exactly. So React would be on a static server or static file server. The JavaScript, the CSS, the images, all of the stuff that's related to your React web application would be on a static file server. Django would then reference to that static file server. So in that sense, then they actually live on different servers, but Django itself, one of the servers is going to be the one that actually shows the result from the React application. So no, you don't need two domains for that. Unless for some reason you want to have a different domain for your static file server, which you totally can, or you can just use a subdomain for your static file server as well. You don't actually have to have two domains. And that's true for most web applications, right? If you think about like deploying on Heroku, you deploy it on Heroku and you get a subdomain for your project .herokuapps.com. There's millions of apps on Heroku, or probably millions. Maybe it's not actually millions, but there's a lot of things there. So thanks for that question. Okay, so I'm going to go to, let's see, maybe some recent ones. Oh yeah, we're going to be jumping off here. And there we go. Yet again, I'm getting some good questions. And there we go. Haha, I'm a PHP developer. What advantage will I get if I move to Django? Just kidding. I know you meant Django. This is fun. Okay, so number one, you'll start working with Python a lot more. So you won't actually, so bear with me for a second because I haven't written PHP in a while and it was pretty much just manipulating WordPress when I was doing it. You won't be writing your code. Your business logic will not be in HTML. It will be in Python. So you can have business logic or some logic in your actual HTML as well in the way of templates. But you won't need to do that. You'll write it in Python. So if you haven't written Python, then you'll get some familiarity with Python. And the big promise with Python as well is machine learning and AI things. So all sorts of robotic systems also use Python. I don't believe they have support for PHP. Maybe they do. I don't know because I don't use PHP. But that's one of the biggest things. You'll get a lot more usage out of Python itself, which has become the most popular, if not the most popular language in the world. It's like top 3. So that's the big advantage. Django itself, I think, since you are a PHP developer, you can probably build web applications in PHP like that, right? So like if you were like, oh, if you were telling me, oh no, you should definitely use PHP, I'd be like, I don't know. Like I will always probably be able to build something in Django much faster than pretty much anything else because I just know it so well. That includes like Fast API and Flask and some of these other ones. But to stretch your skills will be another benefit. You can actually see things that you like in Python that isn't in PHP, or the things that you like in PHP that's not in Python, and maybe you discover JavaScript and you're like, oh wow, I actually like JavaScript because it's kind of the best of both worlds. That is something that you might end up doing. But always be pushing your skills. That's what I think. Because at the end of the day, you will become a better developer for that. Okay, guys. So thanks so much for coming out. I think I'm going to call it. I should probably prep for tomorrow's bootcamp. And so that is decent. And anyways, so thanks for coming out. Hope you guys had or got something out of this. I did answer a lot of questions. Maybe not as many as I could have. Like I could literally go for hours asking these great questions. There's some really good ones. What's the fundamental difference between Django REST Framework and REST API? They're the same. Django REST Framework makes a REST API for you. So that's what it is for. You can make a REST API without Django REST Framework, but REST APIs are a concept. Django REST Framework implements that concept. Can I suggest some AngularJS 1 tutorials? Why are you using AngularJS? Do not do that. AngularJS 1 is so old. Is it even supported anymore? I don't even know. I have one from years ago. Yeah. Why Django over Django REST Framework with React? Every project is different, so not every project needs the Django REST Framework, and every project does not need React. I love using Django REST Framework, and React. Check out my Tweet Me 2 project, which is create a Twitter-like application on YouTube. Anyways, okay, cool, guys. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.